All right, before we start with example C, I do want you to take just a few seconds to really look at this truth table and how the last three columns were created. Okay, you'll notice that the first two columns are exactly the same as they've been this whole time. It's all the combinations of truth values for P and Q when you have two different things. But I do again want you to look at the structure of how this table is done. So again, starting in the parentheses, okay, the first thing you would address is the negative, okay, the negation. So we make a column for the negation. Once you do the negation, the next thing you would address is that conjunction and. So basically the entire set of parentheses. And then once you have the entire set of parentheses, then we can address that biconditional, which in this case loops in the entire statement. So really spend some time starting to look at how that's constructed, because eventually that scaffolding is going to be taken out from under you because you're going to be needing to structure those arguments. Okay, so going through this truth table, all right, and again, feel free to pause and try to fill out the next column as much as you possibly can on your own before listening to me. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is a not P. So as a reminder, we're using column P here, okay? This is the column that we're looking at, and that's the only column we need to use in order to fill out our results for not P. So remember what that does is it changes all of our truth values. So using column P, we switch all of those truth values to the opposite. Okay, at that point, we are done with, erase. We are done with our not P column. Okay, all right, then moving on to the next part. We want not P and Q. So we want our not P column and our Q column, okay? Now it's an and, so it doesn't matter like what direction you say it, right? Red and blue is the same as blue and red. Q and not P is the same as not P and Q, so it doesn't really matter, okay? So what we're gonna need to do is go up to the table at the top, and we're going to look for, new page, don't have it there. All right, so we're gonna look for our conjunction. That's this table right here. Okay, this is our and in here. And so remember what we want to do is pay attention to these two columns right here and what results whenever you have those two truth values. So looking at this table so that I don't have to go back and forth, what I notice is the only time the conjunction is true is when the first two statements by themselves, the simple statements, are also true. So having said that, I'm going to go back down here and I'm going to look at what I've got highlighted, okay? And anytime I have a true and a true, okay, that's when my statement is true. So if I go down to the third row, I see I have a true and a true. That makes my and statement true, because remember, they both have to be true to make that happen. In all of the other columns, I have at least one false. So if something is false, then this one and this one can't both be true. So all of these other results are false. They have false truth values. Okay, now last but not least, and I'm going to again use some colors here to help. I'm afraid if I erase that this is gonna, get rid of my falses and my trues. Let me put those back real quick, sorry. All right, so we had false, false, true, true. All right, just so we're not getting rid of everything that we needed. Okay, so last but not least, when we look at this column here, oh goodness. All right, when we look at that column there, the previous columns we need to use, okay, we need to use the column for P, because that is this portion of the statement, okay? And then we need to use our column for not P and Q. So I need to use the P column and the not P and Q column. Essentially, I'm ignoring the Q and the not P columns. I don't need them right now, okay? At any given time, you should never use more than two columns. You can use one if it's a negation. If it's any of the others, the and, the or, the if then, or the biconditional, you should only be looking at 2 columns. If you are looking at more than 2 columns, you are doing something wrong, okay? I can tell you that unequivocally. So we are looking at the biconditional. So let's go back up here to the biconditional. That's this last table here on the end, okay? And again, I'm just going to point out the highlights here. When your truth values are the same, okay, when you have a true, true, that gives you a true. When you have a false, false, that gives you a true. Otherwise, the result is a false. So I'm going to use that to go back down here, okay, and I'm going to look at the truth values that we've got going on. So I have a true and a false. I've got one of each. That makes this false. I've got another true and a false. That makes this false. I've got a false and a true, one of each. That makes this false. And here I have a false and a false. Those are the same value, and that was one of the ones where I ended up with a true. Okay, so there's the resulting value of that statement based on whether or not P and Q are true, false, or a combination thereof. All right, in the next video, I'm going to walk you through example D. If you would like to try it on your own, you are strongly encouraged to do so, but just be aware that I have thrown in a third statement, if you will. I've thrown in an R, so the table's a little bit bigger, but the rules are still the same. If you are looking at more than one column, you are doing something wrong, okay? So go ahead and give it a try, and then join me here in just a minute and see how it is that you did.